Today I'm talking with the winner of the IKBF Snake River Tournament winner, Skyler Talbot. Congratulations on winning the IKBF tournament.
Thank you.
Did you have a plan going into the weekend?
Honestly, I had no clue. I'd fish it 2 years prior. I won it 2 years prior as well. So I kind of heard to the grapevine the fishing was tough. I knew what areas I was going to fish probably regardless. And so I just was like, you know what? I'm just here to fish.
And you've won a total of 3 IKBF tournaments since you began fishing for them in 2022. Two of which were during the last tournaments of the year. Man, is there something going on like in the towards the fall transitions that you just get a better bite out of?
Honestly, I can't necessarily say that there is. Hagerman definitely was kind of just a luck of the draw. They're very spot oriented there. And so that I just kind of got lucky with. The one that I won last year at Swan is actually what I consider to be my home lake, even though it's on the Snake. Um, and so I have fished that place a ton. And I won that one throwing big baits and nobody else was. So I kind of had that advantage during that tournament for sure.
And you had mentioned that you like to throw swim baits around. Are those more productive on lakes or rivers? Have you noticed?
Honestly, there's just so much that goes into it. Um, the time of year is a huge thing. The moon plays a big critical role. Like your angles, depending, and the different types of glides you're gonna throw. They got wide glides, you got twitch glides. And me personally, I'm definitely a big reaction bait guy, and so I tend to throw more of the twitch glides, and I like throwing it along cover, along shade lines. I'm looking for that bite first thing in the morning, maybe right on the bank. I had times when I was pre-fishing at Swan where I had found this drop off, and it's really just a mud drop off. It goes off maybe a foot and a half to 2 feet, and pre-fishing it, and we're talking like 25, 30 feet off the bank. And pre-fishing it, I'd cast it over it and was working that bait back, and I probably had 4 or 5 fish following it, and I caught the smaller of them all, and it was still probably about 8, 17, 17 and a half, 18 inches. So um, I went back to that spot during the tournament, but I only caught one off it. Only saw the one, and you know, if it wasn't for the rod reel I was using, I never would have caught that fish. But
Is
but there's a lot that goes into throwing big baits, but it's something that I really enjoy.
that something you had to like build confidence into like over time, or did you just get lucky like right away and start catching some pretty big
No,
fish off of it?
so it's something that took me a long time. I'll do a quick shout out to my buddy Connell. I first met him when we started working at Cabela's in like had to have been like 2016, 2017 kind of time. And he was huge into big baits. He kind of lived in NorCal for a little while. And so he was huge. He was there for some of the openings. Like he met like Butch Brown, a couple of the guys, some of the bigger name guys in the swim bait industry. And when he moved here, it was a huge, I'll call it just like a sticker shock. He comes here and he catches like a 4 or 5 pounder and he goes to throw it back. And we're like, whoa, like, no, what are you doing? And he's like, whoa, this is nothing. And you're like, no, like that's a good fish for Idaho. And we had to break his heart to him that our state record's not even 11 pounds. And he really kind of got humbled then. But he's the one that really got me into big swim baits. He kind of like he met a girl, and so he had kids with her and whatnot, got married, did that whole thing. And so as he transitioned out of it, I essentially just bought all of the stuff and transitioned into it. And he kind of just like pointed me in a direction, and that was the way I went. I tell a lot of guys like I had a depths 250 and a rod to throw on before I owned more than 3 rods. Like that was my fourth rod for
Well,
fishing. So it was tough. All I did back then was just fish ponds. I threw the S waiver 168 a ton. That's still a great bait to go to. But that's where I gained my confidence, was just fishing some of these ponds and just gluing it into your hands. I mean, I've gone probably 3 or 4 months just throwing big swim baits without a bite.
throughout the summer, you're even throwing them too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the time that like I tend to kind of just glue it in my hand because that's the
Okay.
tougher time. So like if you glue that rod in your hand and You can go out there and you can even just see fish in the summertime. At some of the ponds and stuff. The rivers, it's a little bit easier um, to catch bass on with the big bait, mostly around here just because they don't see it a ton. But you know, back then, years ago, I used to just live in town and I lived next to a couple ponds, and so that's just what I do. I could see the pond from my apartment window, and so every day I got off work, I'd go there for 30 minutes and just chuck big baits and just, just get a feel for them.
They're like bystanders wondering what you were doing, or like trying to help you out, or they just
Oh
watching
yeah,
kind of in
yeah.
awe.
It's funny. I got a video actually, one of the only videos I have of a cast to catch, and I'm throwing the S Waver 200, so it's like an 8-inch bait, maybe 8.5, and I'm throwing it, and I'm throwing on this shade line at like 11 o'clock. The sun's up here, um, and I see this shade line, and I just kind of listened to a podcast about fishing shade lines and focusing around those areas, and I was like, oh, there's a shade line, because they talk about in the podcast that those fish tend to use those shade lines as a wall. And so they use them to trap bait or whatever that, kind of just an imaginary line. So I cast that S Waver out there and I'm just working it back. And all of a sudden I see the flash and it just goes doink. And I set the hook and I get the bait in and I got bystanders behind me and they're like, whoa, you caught 2 fish. And I was like, no, no, and I'm holding the bait up and I got a picture with myself and the bait, and the bait's like barely bigger than the fish, and people were just like mind blown. They're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
I remember
So
I saw it for the first time. My mind was pretty blown too.
yeah, yeah, just stuff like that, and it's funny because I remember I just threw a paddle tail, like a 5-inch paddle tail, and I caught a fish on it. I told my buddy, I was like, "That's my first swim bait fish," and he kind of looks at me like, "Yeah, sure," like I had no idea what I was talking about. That I was just excited to catch a fish on what I thought was a swim bait, and then I really got into it, and I was like, "Yeah, I kind of looked dumb when I said that to him, didn't I?" But I love it. I've gone down such a big rabbit hole, and I've helped quite a few other people go down that rabbit hole, especially after I won the tournament at Swan last year on big baits. I don't know how many guys reached out to me and they're like, "Oh, we got to fish. We got to do this. We got to do that." Like, I want to learn more about it. I mean, I probably didn't help a few marriages around the valley because of the cost of those big swim baits, but I love it. It's a lot of fun.
For sure. Is that so you caught the big bass pot for this tournament too at 17 3/4 of an inch? Is it use big baits for that one?
No, so actually going into the tournament, because it's a very similar time of year, I was like, you know what, I am going to throw the big bait. We'll see. Like, I'd heard that there was a ton of grass kicking around, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to throw this out there. We're just going to kind of work it first thing in the morning. And the first 3 casts of the day, I knew instantly. I was like, I am not going to be able to throw this thing today because there was so much floating grass. I mean, like, there's whole bushes floating down the river and you're just like, oh my gosh. And so it's funny. I remember looking, and I caught my first fish at like 8:30, and I have a video from 2 years prior that I sent my wife at 7:57 with my second bass, my second big bass. I finished my limit, and it was like 19 inches. And I took this video and I sent it to my wife at 7:57, and I said, "Hey, I just want you to know I just won this tournament." She's like, "How do you know?" And I did end up winning that tournament um, significantly too. And so it was kind of funny. I was looking, I was like, man, I was like, when I fished this 2 years ago, I had won the tournament by the time, before I even caught my first fish this tournament. I was like, this is rough.
That's crazy. Calling the shots early in the morning.
Yeah, it was nuts. My wife was giving me crap. She's like, well, you can't say it this time. And I'm like, I ain't saying it this time.
Right. And with this, when you qualified for the KFW Kayak Bass Classic, it's taking place next month on Idaho's Dvorak Reservoir. You plan on attending that?
Yeah, I definitely am. It's a lake that I definitely really enjoy fishing. I was able to go there this June, fish with Rick, who was just killing it there. But he fishes that lake like it's nobody's business, and I don't blame him. And I was able to actually catch my PB there. It was like 5.5 pounds. So it's pretty unique lake. I'm pretty excited to go back.
You talking about Rick Thanstrom?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Is that where he broke that record? Was that Dvorak? He got that
Yeah.
23.5 inch. Wow.
Yeah. He is retired and he lives about 45 minutes from the lake. So he fishes that lake 3 times a week. And
That's
he'll
awesome.
he'll have to remind me. But the only time, if you watch his post, the only time that he posts is if he catches a fish that's like 20 inches or bigger. That's when he says it was a great day at the office if it's 20 inches or bigger.
He's funny. I can't wait to talk to
He,
him too.
he is.
And then, so my last question is: you placed in 11th place last year for the classic. Do you have more confidence going to this classic at Dorset because of your past experience for these 2-day events?
Honestly, not really. Door Shack is, man, like it's so hard to describe because those fish are somewhat inconsistent. I mean, they move all day long. Even when I fished it in June, I fished all day long, and you'd get your bite window like right at the end of the day. That was when they were pushing kokanee up on points, and you just had to be lucky and find that point. I'm sure there's some spots where they're pretty consistent, but that lake is so tough to figure out. I got buddies that fish it a ton, and they tell me, that the definition of insanity is fishing that lake in a kayak because I mean they run from Grandad all the way down and back up, and I mean it's crazy how much water they cover. So, but it'll be cool. It'll be really interesting to see where the water levels are at, kind of what's going on. I've heard October is pretty slow. Um, in fact, I was on the phone with a buddy earlier, and he told me, he goes, man, he goes, if you didn't have a championship, I would tell you to not go in October and to wait to November because that's when the fishing really picks up.
Interesting.
So it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited for it. The Willamette last year was a good time. After day one, I think I was sitting pretty good in like fifth or something like that, and then got my hopes and dreams crushed on day two. But that's just how it goes, and we'll just have to see how it is, man. It's just fishing, but I love just getting out there and spending time with a bunch of other dudes that just love to fish.
Right. So how do you plan for that event? Now that the fish move a lot, do you sit in one spot and just wait for them to come back, or are you guys gonna kind of chase them down? Or
No, I mean, if there's one place in Idaho that live scope really shines, it's Door Shack because it's a very unique fishery, and it's pretty interesting. You'll find like the fives and the 6 pounders grouped together with some of the fours and stuff, and they're just from what I've been told. Um, but truly, those big, massive fish do not hang out around each other. They're very lonesome, so it's very much just a random fish. Um, so it'll be interesting to see if anything of that caliber gets caught. I know that what's his name from Sixth Sense? I always forget his name. Josh Jones. He's up there right now, and today actually he just posted that he just caught one that was over 9. So um, yeah, it's the lake's incredible. We'll just have to see how it goes. See if the fish really want to play. I got no doubt that there's going to be a ton of fours caught, maybe even a couple fives and sixes, and we'll see if somebody gets lucky and catches a giant.
all right, that's gonna be crazy. You think it's the lake's gaining popularity over like YouTube exposure and stuff, or has it always been pretty popular?
So even the past 2 years, because it's great of the popularity gain with it, it's decreased a ton in fishing. Um, I've heard about it since high school, but that's just because I'm here in Idaho. But
Right.
recently more, I think, especially um, with those guys in that group, it's blown significantly out of proportion. Um, even mentioning it to a couple other pros, they're like, it's just they think it's sad to see something like that go away. But there's the thing though is that Dwarf I don't think will ever be one of those places like Ivy um, or even Lake Fork that when it's fishing good, it just gets completely blown out of proportion because there's really not a ton of places for people to go unless you want to camp. You're going to bring a camper um, or sleep in the local motel. There's very few Airbnbs. It's very rugged country, and so the chances of anyone ever being able to open anything up that's kind of catered towards a fishing event or something like that, like it's pretty tough. And it is a massive lake. It's huge. So, it's crazy to think that it's gone down the past even just 2 years from the fishing pressure, but there still is just an absolute, I bet there's just a ton of fish in there. I mean, there's so many kokanee, there's a lot of trout. And so those fish just gorge themselves. When I was up there, I actually threw one of my glide baits around, and this was just absolute crazy timing. I had just caught my big fish, my PB, on top water, and of course, I forgot my net because that's how it goes. You know, you go to the lake in Idaho that's got the biggest fish possible, and you forget your net at home. And so I lost my net, and so I was just like, crap, you know. So anyway, so I get this fish in without a net, and I get it released and get all my photos and everything, and I'm actually just like kind of just sitting there, and I'm just looking at the photo. I'm just recapping on what just happened, you know. Like this is just super cool. And all of a sudden, in the same spot in front of me, these fish just start busting right on the bank. It's kind of a shelf that came up, and these fish are just busting. I'm like, oh, cool. So I reach back, I grab my glide rod, I cast my glide rod out there, and I do like 2 or 3 twitches and just get hammered. And I'm bringing it in, and I took a video of this too, and I caught two on my glide rod at the same time, and they both ended up being 18 inches.
What?
Yeah, I
That's
got a video of me
crazy.
like I didn't want to like boat flip them necessarily, so I like got them close and I grabbed the bait on the water and picked them up and lifted them into the kayak. And I got a picture of me like with the bait. I'm just holding it. I took a photo of it, and I took
Dude,
a
that's
video of
amazing.
me after I'd unhooked them, and I laid them out and picked them up, and yeah, they're both 18 inches. It was crazy. You're talking within 5 minutes, you know, like the next cast I took after I'd caught my big one.
That is crazy. I've never
Yeah,
had that happen.
it really doesn't happen all that often. So it's a magical place, you know. Anything's possible there.
It's gonna be a good place to have the finals, that's for sure.
Yeah, it'll be cool. I'm pretty excited about it. So I think if I'm gonna try and get an Airbnb, and if I can't, then I'm just gonna rough it the whole time. I think the state park and Dent both have showers and good bathrooms available. So if you can deal with it being cold at night, you should be all right.
Right. Is that something you do often? Kind of just free camp
I do,
for
yeah.
events?
I a lot of the times, like I used to just throw a cot out on the sides of my pickup truck, and I would just sleep there if I'd go somewhere. Um, Nowadays, I like a little bit more warmth, and so I throw a pad down in the back seat of the Ford, and I'm pretty short. I'm like 5'5", 5.5", something like that, and so I can just kind of curl up in the back of the pickup, and I throw a I got a sleeping pad, and then I'll throw another cushion down there, and I usually sleep pretty good that way. And then if I get cold, I just reach around and turn the truck on and heat it up to what I need, and then turn it off and go back to bed. But it's also
For
less
sure.
pickup. I can usually just kind of undo the pad, get all the air out of it, push it over to the corner, and put everything else in there I need to, and drive home, deal with it later.
What kind of kayak you fishing out of?
I do a Wilderness Systems Recon
Cool.
120. Um, I first bought the pedal drive, and then I bought a motor for it. So I don't even touch the pedal drive. I know one of these days it's probably going to bite me in the behind, because guys talk about that, and I see guys get stranded, but I have never been stranded in my kayak with my motor, and I've been running it for a year and a half now. So when I could, obviously last year we couldn't. So I've been running it all this year, and pre-fishing all last year, and it's never stranded me. So we'll hope that it keeps going.
For sure. Do you use live scope? You mentioned it before. I like door shack.
I do. It's crazy. I use live scope a ton, but I use it more as something to learn. Like fishing at Swan. I fished at Swan for, you know, probably 10, 12 years now. And just this last winter, I went out there with live scope, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I learned so much about what's really under there and what I'm fishing. Like for instance, I fish all winter long. It doesn't matter to me. If there's open water, like it could be 35 degrees outside. If it's sunny and it's calm, I'm out there fishing. Like I've caught fish, bass. Like I've had really good days bass fishing. In fact, I had like a 30+ day fishing in February, throwing a red crank in 6 inches of water.
In Idaho, like
I mean,
snow and everything, or
yeah, oh yeah,
wow.
yeah. I mean, we really don't keep a ton of snow here, but it's still like the water temps are still cold. They're only like
Yeah.
anywhere in February they're in they can be kind of closer to the 40s depending, but a lot of times in the winter I'm fishing water temps that's anywhere from 36 to, the warmest before it really kind of warms up, be like 41, 42.
You got to wear a
And
dry
those
suit, or
fish,
you?
I don't. I probably should, but I just keep my life jacket on and I just play it safe. I try to only go out on days when I know it's going to be, sunny. That helps a ton, and very light wind, if any wind at all. Um, I got bibs. I throw bibs on. I just want a dry suit top, so I'll probably run that. But I usually would just wear my old trusty Sims jacket over it all, something that was waterproof and windproof. And I would just go out there with a beanie on and, maybe have some gloves. But you'd be surprised, you're fishing in the wintertime and just how warm your hands stay, even in the sun. It's pretty incredible. I mean, I've gotten sunburned in the winter fishing. So
Wow.
it's one of those things, but I love it. I'll go out there and I'll drag a swim bait. I'll throw a blade bait. Um, I we went out in December over to CJ. Me and Mumford did. Michael Mumford. I'm pretty good friends with him, so I try to fish with him a bunch, and we're just messing around. We're catching, crappie and bass, and I'm playing. This is like the first time I'd gotten out with my live scope, and I'm like looking around, checking things out, and I look over and I'm like, okay, well, I kind of want to know what some of these bigger fish are that are schooling above the crappie and stuff. And so I threw a jerkbait over to them and it ended up being trout. So it was really interesting watching how these trout, they would like figure eight and fight around the jerkbait, and then one of them would break out of it and stack it.
Weird.
It
That
was
is cool to
just
see, though.
bizarre. It is. It's super cool to see. But we're sitting there perch fishing and crappie fishing, and I've just got a cast master on, and I would simply just cast out at the bottom, and then just kind of just flop it up and down on the bottom, catching perch and whatever else. Well, you'd be doing that, just flopping it, and all of a sudden they'd all disappear. I didn't see anything on the screen, but everything. I'm talking like 45 feet down, everything, because they get so thick in there that there's like 25 to 30 feet of fish,
Whoa.
and yeah, and so like they would just disappear, and you'd be like, huh, wham, and you just felt the tick, and we caught quite a few bass doing that. Unintentionally. I try not to catch bass that deep, and so it was kind of like, I really don't have anything to fizz or anything like that. I'm not huge on fizzing. And so it was just kind of one of those things where it was like I'd either like try to slowly work them up as slow as I could, but I had a couple of them where they'd shoot straight up, and so I'd like reel them up and get them. I'm like, cool, big fish, throw it right back down just to try to push it back down again. Like I didn't hardly take any photos or anything because I was just trying to get him to shoot back down to the bottom
Right.
before he could really have a chance to fill up and get stuck. So, but I love fishing. It's like I said, I'll fish all winter long. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I've caught fish at Swan. The water temps are like 36, 37 degrees. A lot of times I fish the Snake at Brownlee. I got a couple places there. I catch fish when it's, water temps are the same there. It seems like it's kind of funny, but I've had some phenomenal days when the water temps are, you know, 39 and a half to 40 and a half degrees. I've had some really good days in 40-degree water.
That's wild. I won't even leave the house if it's not 50.
Right. And it's nice, dude. I mean, some of the most beautiful, calm days that I have ever had fishing have been in December and January, February, fishing out on the river. I got photos of where you got snow-covered mountaintops and it is just glass and the sun's out and it is just gorgeous. And it's funny. I use live scope on some of those places because I was doing this before I had live scope. I'd go out there in the wintertime and do it. And I went out to the one spot that I'd always go to, and I'd usually catch like 3 or 4 fish in a day, nothing crazy. I was like, at least I'm catching fish for it being as cold as it is. And I just had the regular down and side scan. I run Garmin, so, and, I'd catch 3 or 4 fish during the day. Maybe the buddy that was with me would catch a couple too. And I went to that spot with live scope and I'm like panning around and I'm like, there is nothing here. Like there's hardly any rock. Like there's nothing. Like these fish that I was catching had to have just been swimming by for fun. Just like they just must have been little schools just swimming. And I just would happen to catch a couple in a row and then it'd be done.
That's wild too. You still fish that spot and then there's nothing there?
Yeah, there's like nothing there.
Wow.
It's a big flat area that they kind of just would go around. It's part of the snake's little section. They kind of it's like the upper end of what they would call grizzly. So, and that's kind of where I would fish. But those fish live there 24/7 all year long. I've caught them there in 30 feet of water. I've caught them there in 10 feet of water. And, when the water temps are 40 degrees. So it's
That
also
is
a great place
wild.
to catch catfish. Got a lot of catfish in the winter with jerk baits
That's
and
my
stuff
goal
like
for
that through
this
there.
winter, actually.
Oh man, I tell you, you want to have just a blast with catfish. You come up, you fish brownly in the springtime and just throw white. Throw anything white. I've even caught them on topwater poppers.
Really?
It's nuts when they're like really aggressive and they're spawning. That top water's hitting really well. Yeah, I've had days where you see them. You're fishing just kind of the bait just going down. This is in my buddy's boat, and you cast next to a bush and you pop pop pop, and you just see this big old massive dark thing come up and just whack and just swamp it. And like almost instantly, you set that hook and they just sit there and roll on the surface. But it's crazy. Yeah, at the most I caught today was like four catfish on poppers. But they'll absolutely annihilate like a white spinner bait or even just a regular football jig. In fact, they just had Treasure Valley Bass. I think TVB. They just had their championship. I think it's TV. Anyways, on Brownlee, and one of the guys that I know, we just his nickname's Dobbs. His last name's Dobransky, so it's Dobbs. I think the catfish that he caught on a football jig was, I think it was like 42 pounds.
Holy
Yeah,
cow.
yeah. There's some big ones in there. He wishes he would have taken some better measurements of it because it probably would have been close. He was saying it would have been close, if not like the state record, something like that. Like the thing was just, I mean, he's a good sized dude already, and then he's holding that thing up, and you're like, that thing is massive.
Yeah, that's what I
So,
need.
right, right. I'm like, yeah, I would take that any day of the week on a football head jig. Just,
Sure.
it's crazy. It's crazy. You can catch everything there. But
I
I
plan on
love it
fishing
all.
more Idaho in the next couple years.
There's a lot of good stuff around here. It's like I said, fishing in the winter, though, it always makes me laugh. And you hear about guys back east talking about fishing deep and fishing cold, and they're talking about 12 to 15 foot fishing deep. And you're like, yeah, I'm dragging bottom in 30 to 40, like coming up, trying to come up over shelves and stuff like that. So,
Oh yeah.
but it's a lot,
I don't even
a
consider
lot
it
of
deep till
patience.
you're at 20.
Oh, I know, huh? Isn't that crazy? Crazy the difference,
It is.
and it's so unique here. Like for us, where we find largemouth on the snake is very unique. Hagerman is primarily largemouth with some smallmouth. You tend to catch a lot of smaller smallmouth there. But I have caught one smallmouth there in the winter that was 3.5 pounds. But anywhere else, like the largemouth in Idaho, at least for our region, if it's in the river or anything, they tend to kind of like hang around a lot of rock a lot of the time, like very specific rock. You'll find them
Hmm.
like on weeds and stuff like that too, but it's funny just finding them on rock in some places. Went to this lake with a buddy the other day, and we know there's like pretty much just largemouth in there, and we're going around and we're flipping like all these bushes and everything like that, and all this grass, and we're like, man, what the heck are they? And I looked at him, and I was like, we need to find some rock, and he's like, rock. I'm like, yeah, we need to find rock. And we fish like 3/4 of this place, and we come around, and there's just a pile of lava rock, and I throw an underspin, and I lost one that was like probably in that 5 pound range. It came up, and it came up. I mean, right next to the boat a couple different times. The very last one, it came up and just said goodbye. But we caught a bunch of fish right there, just ranging anywhere from 1 pound to like 3 pounds. And I told him, I was like, yeah, we just needed to find rock.
It's wild. Yeah,
So
it's usually like smallmouth territory.
I know it's pretty crazy, but and not that you can't obviously catch them on some bushes and stuff like that because there's a lot still caught under bushes, but it's funny how you catch a lot of them on rock, like especially if you just hop the border and go over to Oregon and fish Lake Oahe. It's like all just like rock shale, and that lake is known for just big largemouth.
Yeah.
It's sloped off now, but like yeah, that's if people go to Oahe, you're fishing rock or flats for largemouth.
Crazy. Seemed like every
Yeah,
lake I fished on the west side of Washington was just mud bottom, soft bottom,
I
and they
hate
would just
fishing mud.
hide in these little patches of vegetation, like 20 fish per like grass spot.
Yeah, I ran into that somewhat up when we fished Coeur d'Alene. You'd be out there and there'd be nothing. You'd find a little grass hump and there'd be a couple big fish sitting on it.
Yep.
Crazy.
It is
But
crazy.
there's so many diverse fisheries here. It's a lot of fun. Like it's so down there in Hagerman where we were on that stretch is primarily largemouth, like I was saying. But you go like just past that dam on the upper end of it, and it's primarily smallmouth. Like there's like no largemouth.
Crazy. What's the, you know what it is, or is it just the way it is?
Not a clue. It's just how it is. It. I got a buddy that lives in Twin and he fishes down there a bunch, and he's like, I don't know, it just is what it is. For some reason, largemouth just like this part of the river a lot better than they do up there.
Interesting. Almost like a gang war, maybe smallmouth versus largemouth. They're
Yeah,
still
right, right, they're right, right. What are you doing up here?
I
Kick you back
think it's
down.
crawdad thing.
Yeah,
I wonder if
yeah.
they
What's
do fight.
crazy is, oh, I bet you they do. It's pretty crazy what I've seen when we fished Walcott a few years ago, my first year, and we'd watch fish on beds like T-bone carp.
Whoa.
Yeah, those
I've never
smallmouth,
seen that.
a largemouth or a carp would come swimming through and get close to their beds, and they would just hit them just to get them
Dang.
off, or even anywhere close.
That's crazy too. Like dolphins, charged it.
Oh, I know. Smallmouth are just a whole other animal, man. There's nothing like them.
They're fun.
I mean, even like I've fished in Texas. Obviously, I've been to California, but you get a big smallmouth, and there's nothing like it. The Florida strain
Yeah.
fight pretty dang hard too. Don't get me wrong, but there's nothing like smallmouth.
Nothing.
The aggression
Yeah,
that
no.
you get out of it's uncomparable.
They fight so hard from the get go. There isn't even like a head shake. It's just a pull, tug, and go.
Oh man, especially if you're fishing in like a heavy current fishery, um, those fish that live in the current just fight like crazy. you know.
Yeah.
But those fish at Dwarf Shack, I can tell you right now, even though they're not major, like they don't live in the current, they can put up one heck of a fight. Like there's a lot of guys down here, locals, that'll tell you that those fish up there will outfight any fish pound for pound, and they're dang near right. I mean, those fish, you hook into one, and it's you're on for a ride. You catch one that'll be like 14 inches, and you're like, oh, that's got to be like a 3 pounder. You
Yeah.
get it in, you're like, man, what the heck.
That's great.
It's
I like
crazy.
smallhead for that or smallmouth for that reason. They're just more
Yeah.
aggressive. They're just, you never know what you're getting either. Like a 12-incher feels like a 16 sometimes.
Oh man. Yeah, like I said, especially in the current. They're living in that current, man. They dog you. That current helps them a lot.
Then in door shack, they're chasing kokanee around. Those things aren't slow either.
No, and they got to be good fish there because I mean they've got kokanee, but I don't know if a lot of people know this either, but there's also mackinaw in there too. So they got lake trout in there.
Really?
So, yeah, yeah.
Do they
So
get
that's
big
another
like on
predator.
Michigan or?
They get pretty big. Yeah, yeah. I've never like seen or heard of anything like massive coming out of there, but my buddy said he's seen some pretty big lake trout there.
That's crazy. I had
Yeah,
no idea. I didn't even know
yeah.
we had stripers in the Northwest until that Oregon tournament last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's crazy, I don't know. I don't think there's anywhere in Idaho that has them. But if you just go across the border into Utah, they don't have stripers. They have stripers in Powell and down towards like St. George area. But they have wipers, or
Oh
what
yeah.
they're called. They're the white bass striper mix in a couple different places over there.
Do they get just as big as the striper, or are they?
No, not even close.
Oh, okay.
Not even close. But I do want to make it to a big striper fishery, whether it be the Delta or Lake Texoma, because I've got a 6-inch lunker bunker that's got a date with a striper one of these days.
It's funny. I moved to Arizona for a couple months to try and scratch stripers off my bucket list. I never did catch one.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I mean, I just watched videos recently. I don't remember. It's one of the lakes in Cali. I'll remember it at some point in time. I'm sure after I'm done talking, but just showed just boils, these big boils on a lake. They're bass fish, and they pull up and they just see boils or stripers going crazy, and I'm like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I love that. Like the bigger aggressive fish. I do love bass fishing, but like when we were up at Coeur d'Alene, I told everyone, I was like, I don't even care if I place here. I want a pike. I want a big pike. And I did. I ended up catching one that was roughly about 36 inches
Holy cow.
on a jerk bait. And it was cool. It was just like you twitching it, and all of a sudden it was like you just hit a stump. And he had just T-boned that 110 junior, and it was, yeah, they
Dang.
just dog. There's nothing like it. Those big fish like that. Something that's pretty big down here too that I've done before is like sturgeon.
Oh yeah.
I don't do it as much anymore, but yeah, I mean, same kind of thing. You hook into them, and it's just like wall. Your rod, you're just these big, massive head shakes, and so tiger muskie are on my list. I've hooked at least one confirmed one I saw on LiveScope, and I wasn't prepared for him. I wasn't even trying to go for him, and I dropped down this little like 3-inch soft plastic bait into a bush. And by the time I hit the bush, I watched what looked like half the bush go like this and go up like this. About that time, I felt dink, and I set the hook, and it was like wah wah, dink, and it was gone.
Man, I've only seen muskie. I saw two of them. I think it was like Mayfield Lake or something like that. They were giant dinosaur looking. They're scary. I wouldn't even touch them. You don't
Oh,
even want to do
something
it.
about those big toothy critters and just the hard fight for them. Fish of 1,000 casts, like it
Yeah.
just gets going, man. Like I just want to catch them. There's just
For
something
sure.
about them. I'll go try and throw a $200 bait at them. Why not? You know, like let's go. I'm
The
ready.
figure eight thing, man. You gotta do that too, or
Oh man, I've never tried that, but it is on the list. I want to get a balm, the big multi-piece joint bait. That's yeah, that's one that's definitely on the list. I'd love to go
yeah.
down.
Oh,
The guys go down to like Mexico, and they do these big swim bait trips down to Mexico on Lake Bacharach, and they just hammer them on glides and soft baits.
all the way down to Mexico.
Yeah, for like bass and stuff like that. They go down there. Lake El Salto is another one that gets fished a ton, but the swim bait guys go to Lake Bacharach, and they just it's nothing to catch like a 30-pound afternoon bag.
All right. Wow.
Like it's like nothing.
Backwards.
So yeah, it's pretty crazy. But I've definitely noticed like this year versus other years, like my mindset has been more on big fish than it has been just like catching a ton of fish. That's kind of why I went and did Door Shack, and I probably haven't fished as much as I normally have, just because I just have been kind of like picking my times of the year, and just doing that in life, like just picking when I'm going out and just trying to go after the biggest fish that I can.
Right. Wow. I don't even think about big fish. I just think about fishing. Just
You
catching
know, the,
something.
you got to go through it. They say that there's like different levels to it, and that's one of them. Right now you're in that I don't care. I just want to catch fish level. And then once you
Yeah.
get tired of that, you're just kind of like, all right, yeah. You're like, okay, I'm tired of catching some. I'm tired of having 100 fish days with 15 inchers. I want a 2 fish day with some 20s.
Right.
Like I want something that really gets my blood pumping.
For
And
sure. I feel like
that's
I'm doing like going backwards. I've been fishing like lakes pretty much for bass my whole life. Now I just moved to where it's all mostly river, and I'm still just trying to figure it out.
oh wow. So where are you at? Like, what's your closest river then?
Oh, the Columbia. I'm in Tri Cities.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah. I mean, honestly, you got everything there. Like I would, if I had walleye closer to me too, I would 100% fish for walleye. There's some big walleye down there too, Tri Cities. There's some tanks.
There is. I don't know how to catch them. What do you like jig? I heard you just jig on the bottom. Just take your kayak up the river a little bit and let it drift down. And just jig up and down with the little jig.
Yeah, Jim Davis is definitely the guy to hit up. I think that
Oh
they
yeah,
actually do in November. They actually do a walleye. I don't know if it's called like the walleye special or something like that,
the walleye
and it's
social, I think.
the walleye social, and it's like it's free to anyone. And they just want to get a big group of people to come down, and they just like show you how to fish with walleye, and it's a good time.
Have you been yet?
I haven't. I want to. I
Yeah.
talked to him about it. They do a big crappie tournament here. Jed Riviera puts it on at Brownlee um, for children that need like foster homes and stuff like that. Like all this stuff gets donated and money wise. It's honestly by far probably the funnest tournament I've ever fished. Just a crappie shootout.
I think I've heard it. That's the one where you win the belt buckle, right?
Yeah. Because Jim Davis won it this year finally, and I called
Yeah.
it for him too before it. I was like, hey, this is your year, dude. I was like, you're gonna win it. He's like, yeah, I can only wish, you know. And then afterwards, I was like, I told you.
That's funny.
Yeah, that was by far the funnest tournament I fished all year long.
And it's a
Like
different
it
one, right? You
was,
catch a different species of fish.
yeah, you got 5 different species, and you got to
Ooh.
try and catch all 5, and you can catch as many as you want from the one species. But so, say you catch like a 12-inch crappie, for every inch of that crappie is worth 25 points. So you can catch as many as you want, but your one biggest one is what counts points wise.
Okay.
And so it's whoever ends up with the most points at the end of the day. But yeah, it's like bass, perch, crappie, catfish, and trout are the main ones. And then you can get bonus points for squaws or carp.
Oh wow. Getting points for
So
squawfish. That's new.
right. Shoot, there's people that make a living on it over there in Oregon.
Here too,
Fish and
man. They got these
squawfish.
little signups everywhere.
Yeah, that's crazy. But we got some pretty big ones here. Kind of wish that was around. Maybe I'd be more enticed to go catch them.
Yeah,
I know a
right.
couple of lakes that could really use some coaling.
For sure.
I know a bunch of guys caught them at Hagerman. I caught one,
I didn't know they were in
but it was a
lakes. I
lot
just
of
thought it
fun.
was a river thing.
No, I know a couple of lakes around here that have them too. Like
Cool.
like Arrow Rock has it. I'm sure Lucky Peak does because they're both connected. Bunch of lakes like Cascade that's got pipe minnows in it. I mean anything connected on all these chains and stuff like that. They've all got pipe minnows, all the rivers, everything.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Your
it's the
rivers
best
are
surfing
your
bait
lakes
you
are
can
like
use.
dammed up rivers too.
Yeah, so the Snake River, um, for us, it starts here. So it starts way up in eastern Idaho. Um, I could be wrong just because I don't know 100%, but I believe like the first dam that I know of you come to that's for the snake is American Falls. I'm probably
Okay.
wrong on that one. I'm sure there's a couple other small dams or something along the way, but the one that I think of is like American Falls. And from American Falls, it goes into Walcott. And from Walcott, it goes down around there to Bell Rapids, and et cetera, down to like CJ. And there might even be one or something else in between. But then from CJ, it's Swan. And then from Swan, it's Brownlee. And then Hills Canyon or Oxbow, then Hills Canyon. So it just
Interesting.
goes on. Yeah. But it makes it a lot of fun. Then I get to fish open water all year long.
For sure. You using a boat too, or you just mostly kayak all the time?
I mostly kayak. I've got a couple buddies in the boat world, and I'll go fishing with them. And a couple of them have wanted me to transition over. I even had one guy that told me he'd pay for the first like 3 or 4 tournaments for the boat world if I switched over, but I can't help
Right.
it. I'm too involved with the kayak stuff.
Are
Boat's
you
nice for like free
TDing now
fishing, but
too?
I was this last year.
Okay.
But this change is coming, and I'm not going to be involved in it anymore. Chris Ford has stepped down as well, so
Oh, okay.
I just want to get back to the fun fishing part of it.
Right. Yeah, I haven't heard much from Chris. She's on Facebook or anything.
Yeah. He just recently posted with that last one that he is officially announced it. He announced it for us at Coeur d'Alene, that he's going to be stepping down. He's done it for the past 5 years, and he's had a good time with it. And he just changed jobs again. So he was a teacher, and now he is a firefighter again for the state of Idaho, or
Oh,
for the state. And so he's just he needs. There we go. He needs his needs have changed for what he needs for his family. He will
yeah.
have like 4 days on, 3 days off, that kind of a schedule. And so he doesn't always know if he can make it. He did end up making it to the last two tournaments of the year. And so I stepped in as acting tourney director for a lot of that and had him help me through some of that. So, but he's been great to work with. I love Chris. He's a great guy.
Cool. You ever get like a blurry vision just looking at fish all day? Like you just kind of get distracted what you're doing?
If I get blurry vision, that's because it's because I have an eye problem. Actually, I legit
Oh,
have
really?
an eye issue. I have to go to Utah for it. Yeah, yeah, I've
Oh,
been dealing with that
sorry.
for like 5 or 6 years. So the only time that I ever deal with blurry vision is that. But when I get out there, I just get focused and I just fish. You know, it's one of those things. Like you know, what's funny. So during the tournament, the spot that I actually wanted to hit, um, Dan was sitting on, and so I kind of just went past him. My first spot was just a complete bust. I mean, like a whole wall of just crap was over there. And I was like, yeah, I ain't fishing this. And so I had moved on down, and Dan was sitting out, and I was like, oh, crap, like a couple of years ago, I caught some good fish off of that spot. And I was like, yeah, well, we'll just see how he's doing. So I kind of went past him and just, hey, what's up? What's going on? How you doing? And he's like, man, I haven't even, like, the only fish I've caught has been like 11 and a half inches. And I was like, really? All right, okay, thinking in my head, I'm like, well, maybe what everybody's saying is right, like it must be fishing really tough. Um, and so I just kind of moved on down river and started fishing a couple spots, and I got to one spot that I would probably consider like the next like main hole, just down, and I just started whacking. There's a little spot offshore, and there's a big rock pile, and it's real snaggy. And I was just throwing at first I was just throwing a, uh, a ball headed swim bait. And I caught like a couple smallmouth that were, of size, over 12 inches, but the amount of that I caught that were like 10 to 11 and 3/4, like it was dumb. I mean, I probably caught like 20, 25 fish just right there doing that. And finally I was like, all right, well, this isn't it. I found fish, so that's half the battle. So let's just change it up. And then I started fishing close to the bank, and I was throwing a jig at first. And I had caught most of my fish on the jig, thrown on the bank, and then I kind of stopped hitting that, and then I came back behind the area where I fished that and threw the wacky rig. And that was when I started catching the largemouth, and yeah, I caught quite a few largemouth.
Yeah.
Everything except for like one fish and my limit in it coming on the wacky rig.
Really?
And I had caught my limit, and I went up and moved up, and I was talking to Dan, and I was like, hey, if you caught anything, it's like 11:30 this time. He's like, I've got like, I don't remember if he had like one fish for his limit or if he didn't have any. And I just told him, I was like, I'm playing with the devil here, but Dan, if you want your limit, I was like, go right there. I'm like,
Right.
I can't promise you that you'll catch, you know, a bunch of big fish. I was like, but you should at least get your limit. And he's like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'll kind of go down that way. And we split ways. And I know on his way down there, he lost a big one. And as he lost his big one, where he was just fishing, I caught one that was like 16 and a half. And so then that was kind of fun. I caught another smaller one just up above there. And then that was it. And I came back down. And when I met back up with him again, he was fishing in the hole that I told him to. And he had three fish in his limit at that point in time. So I always just try to make it a priority, even when I wanted it at Swan. If I've got my limit and I know that there are guys that are struggling, like I'm all for being like, hey, dude, look, like, I'm taking a risk, right? By inviting someone over to come and fish my area or whatever. But like, it's just about having fun, you know, and it's a lot more fun if you can at least get your limit on tourney day. And so I try to invite other guys, if they're struggling or whatever, like, hey, come on over, or like, dude, like, go over here, go fish over there. Like I can't guarantee you a massive limit, but like, there's a good chance that you have the availability to catch your limit over there.
That's very cool.
So I try to do that every tournament day. Even I'm really good friends with John Bush, and on our way back up, um, I went and I met him at the spot that I had left first thing in the morning. We kind of just met up right there, and I told him, I was like, all right, well, I was like, you know, I feel like I've got a good limit, and he didn't have anything, and unfortunately, I don't think he caught even a fish that tournament. But I told him, I was like, hey, dude, why don't you fish in front of me? And I'll just clean up behind you. And we laugh about it now, but the same bush, he had like 3 casts under, and then I cast 2 casts, and I caught 2 fish in a row underneath that same bush.
Oh man.
Just how it goes. But I'm always trying to help other people out, and I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, okay, we're good buddies. Let's fish together. Like, but if I've got my limit or whatever, and I feel like I'm in a good position, I'm like, you go ahead.
That's
Because
cool.
that's what I would want someone to do to me if I was struggling somewhere. I mean, especially with John or anybody that comes from out of town, that really either gets like half a day of pre-fishing or no pre-fishing, that I meet up with or whatever. Like, I'm gonna try and help them out too if I'm in a decent spot, or heck, if we're both just sucking it up, like, hey, dude, let's suck it up together.
Right.
Like this is what I've caught my fish on. Like, let's bounce back and forth. Let's try to figure something out. Like, even though I'm super competitive, like, I want people to have fun. I want there to be more people. You know.
It's the way to do it for sure to grow the sport, just help people out. That's awesome, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Anytime I run into somebody, I'm fun fishing, whatever, I'm like, hey, you should come do tournaments. Like, it's super easy. It's not as intimidating. I think only like a couple guys have ever done it and come and tried, but it's always worth a shot inviting them. So, although only thing I can say is no.
And then they take your money. Like Dan Zimmershed, he invited Dean Hills, and Dean Hills ended up winning that tournament, that first one.
Oh man, it's funny. Um, I like Dean. Dean's a good dude. I remember, so when Dan won up at Coeur d'Alene, what's funny is that, like, everybody had already taken their turn with that whole like pre-fishing where he caught his fish, and like, we caught some fish off of it, but it wasn't anything crazy, right? Or whatever. And Dan starts there in the morning, and I told him the night before, because he's kind of known for throwing a drop shot, and so I told him, I was like, Dan, I'm like, you're gonna go in there tomorrow. I was like, you're gonna shake your little worm, and you're gonna catch all of them. And he didn't catch them on a worm, but he caught them all, and he kicked our rear end. So it was a good time. But I mean,
He's
like, that's
funny,
just what it's
dude.
all about. Like, it's just about just having fun. Even if you get your teeth knocked in, like, it's fun. I love it.
Right.
The group of guys that we have, you're going to get a bad guy or two out of a bunch. That's just what it is. But I feel like for the most part, for what we have camaraderie here, like, it's unbeatable. So I love it. I love being able to hang out with the guys. I made a ton of friends fishing. I still fun fish with now, and I'm gonna absolutely continue to fun fish with, even if I were to stop doing tournaments, because they're just good dudes.
Right. Yeah, I was surprised. Not surprised, but like everyone's been really nice, and no one's ever been just like go away, or when I asked like them to come on the podcast, everybody's been okay with it and down to do it, which was a
Right,
surprise to me.
right.
Like I didn't think that was gonna be the case.
Yeah, and the one thing that I always keep in my head too, right, is that it's like, there's no secrets in Idaho. Like, you can figure out how to throw the same worm, maybe different than somebody else can, but they're all the same holes. Everybody's got access to the exact same stuff. There's not like some secret little bush that's got a little riverway that you can kind of go under and sneak back into with the kayak. Like, we're all fishing the same stuff. It's just whether or not you can find it, but it's there.
Right.
And so I've never been big on gatekeeping or anything like that. I will say with Hagerman, um, my goal, I always win one tournament a year, it seems like so far. And so when Hagerman came up, and it's been a rough year for me, I was like, man, like guys that I would normally like try to help out a little bit. I'm like, hey, look, all right. I helped out a couple guys this year, and they kicked my rear end in the areas I told them to fish. So I'm like, it's nothing against you, but I got to do this. I'm like, I'm not going to not tell you, but I might tell you places that are holes that I'm not going to fish. And so it's kind of funny, but usually I'm just an open book. I'm like, yeah, this is kind of my plan. Like, I've got a couple places, and I'm just going to go fish, But I mean, guys kind of get it too, Like there's a couple guys that'll kind of get like hole specific or bait specific, and you're like, why'd you put me in that position? Like I'm too nice of a guy to not tell you, but I don't want you to ask me.
Right.
So, but I can't help it, Like it's nothing serious. We're all here to have fun. I'm super competitive, but we're all here to have fun,
You play any other sports?
I don't know. I do a bunch of hunting and stuff like that. I grew up like shooting waterfowl, and so I was really big into waterfowl for a while. But the past couple of years, I've really kind of gotten away from waterfowl, and I've gotten more into bow hunting.
Oh yeah. Like
So
deer and
between
elk?
that, yeah. In fact, elk I'm really new with. I just called them my first bull on last Thursday. So that was pretty cool, kind of a fun experience. But now I stay busy on the side. I'm an electrician with electrical school, and so I'm busy doing that. My boss is awesome. He loves me doing what I'm doing, and so I kind of can just take off whenever I need to or want to, and be able to go do some of this stuff that I like to do. But we've got an event rental company on the side. I got an Airbnb in Florida, and my in-laws are gone on a church mission right now, so we're helping take care of 10 acres. And then we also help with a horse boarding facility that's just across the road. So I stay busier than I would like to sometimes, but it's good though. Keeps me out of trouble for the most part.
Right.
So even if I wanted to play another sport, yeah, there's always something, whether it's something breaking down on the skid steer or a windstorm blows through and blows half the tree apart. In fact, I'm looking right now and I'm like, I got to start cutting wood for winter. We got a boiler that helps heat the whole house with water. It heats the water up to a temperature, and you just keep the boiler stocked. And so we go through a lot of wood. And right now I'm like, yeah, it's about time I start going out there and cutting.
So you ever have to buy wood too, or you usually have enough to cut up?
No. So my father-in-law, he's addicted to wood. There's a lot of family jokes that go around, which is fair because one of Idaho for a very long time, and he just retired from it this last December, and so he has always loved woodworking and working with wood and just anything around it. And so he loves wood. Any opportunity he gets to go cut wood or anything with wood, he is all over it. And so we have half a forest back here on the 10 acres. I just got to cut it down. So yeah, I got a skid steer with an attachment. I can pick all the logs up and move them where I need to, and just get there with the chainsaw and the wood splitter and just go to town. But he loves it. We've got a lot of kind of family fun jokes that talk about him and wood. So, and they've been awesome. I married into the family in 2021, and they just have absolutely accepted me in, and it's been awesome because he's a business. Awesome. He's been able to help us. I'm actually in business with him on the Airbnb, and we've helped him with a couple different other places. So it's been really good. I've learned so much from them, and I absolutely love them and what they've done for me in my life. So, and that's what it's all about too, is just remembering family. It's easy to get caught up in fishing all these tournaments and getting focused on them. And I gotta fish a week before, and I gotta do all, but you gotta keep your home life in a good, healthy relationship too. Because if your home life isn't in a good place, you're not gonna be able to do what you're gonna need to do. Your brain's gonna be somewhere else the whole time, and you won't be able to focus. So I try to keep a good balance, and I definitely wouldn't be able to do what I do. Obviously without being able to leave with my boss, but my wife, she is so supportive,
Yeah.
and that's huge. Even on a couple of these big bait podcasts, they say a lot of the guys who are really able to shine in fishing and in big baits in particular is what they're talking about, right? Is a woman behind him that's just like, go, you know, just go and do what you want to do. Like, that's your thing, go. And that's what my wife has essentially done with me. And there's times where I've compromised and I've been like, like I can go, but I know that like I should stay home and I should, I definitely need to do this. Or there's times where I wanted to do stuff, but there's something with the family going on, um,
Right.
be something with my niece or my nephew, an activity or something. And I'm like, no, I got to go to that. I got to support them because they support me.
It's good to have for sure. I think some of that
Yeah.
not had that. Yeah, you're definitely in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So this has probably gone on pretty long. So, whatever you want to end it or you want to continue, like I'm one of those guys, like I'll keep the convo going, so.
I do got to take my son to his Muay Thai, but
No, you're good, man. No worries. So
definitely back. Cool. No, this has been fun, dude. We should do this again for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Anytime you want me on, man, just hit me up, dude. I'll come on and
I
we'll
will.
talk about whatever. You want to talk about big baits or you want to talk about just fishing in general, you want to just get a couple guys from each state and, something that'd be kind of cool is if, we could plan something, right? Where we all went fishing and then we talked, maybe did a small little portion of the day before, went fishing and then talked about, the after how it
Yeah,
was or whatever, it's like something like that'd be kind of cool.
that would be cool. I'm thinking about starting like a Discord too for like all the people that compete, just to like these ideas and be able to
Yeah.
communicate and do like you had just mentioned. Like I think that would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be way cool, So, or even, if guys that aren't able to fish it, maybe do like a pre-podcast on a lake that somebody may know really well, but isn't being able to fish it.
Yeah,
Like, what do you think about this tournament? How do you think it's going to go?
like now I'm trying. This is like now like I can reach more people. Kind of like
Yeah,
trying to do different things for next year and this off season.
right, right. Hey, constantly trying to better yourself. Everybody's got all these
Yeah,
great ideas, and there's a lot of great platforms to learn on, man.
I think I am gonna do that Discord. Yeah, I think ideas and then be able to just communicate right away with people.
Yeah,
As like a
that'd be awesome.
group chat kind of a thing, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I'm gonna have to look into that. I think I can do that
That'd be great.
for sure. Yeah, my son knows how to do that. He'll tell me.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not that old yet, so I still know quite a bit of stuff, but I'm 27, so I'm like on
Oh,
that line of
so you know
being
about
old
Discord then?
and kind of know what it is.
Yeah, I know what it is. I don't know how to use it. I'm that age.
Like, yeah, I'm like, I can figure out with YouTube, but that's my way to find it. I'm in that YouTube generation of like, okay, how do I replace this on my pickup? Let's go to YouTube.
Yeah, I've
I
learned so
YouTube.
many things off YouTube. Man.
Oh man, yeah, yeah, a ton. I start building my own arrows. Where I learned that YouTube.
It is so much information out there. I learned like languages off YouTube, play guitar, all kinds of things.
Oh man, it's awesome. That was one of the things that like guys would talk to me about with big baits when I won in Swan. It's hard for me to like teach them how to do anything because I'm like, all of the information that I know is out there, you know, and it's like, just go onto YouTube and watch it, but then you go out there and you apply it. Because if there's two of us, one after another trying to do the exact same thing, it just doesn't always work out as well. Like angles are really important. And so like that was the hardest part. Like the guys don't want to go fish, and it's like, yeah, look, we can go fish, but like the big bait thing, like trying to like really like teach you how to do it. Like I can give you suggestions, but like the best thing you can do is just glue that rod to your hands and just go.
Sure.
So
We should definitely do an episode on big baits.
yeah,
Oops, sorry.
I'm game. I did a seminar for beginners down here at Idaho Rod and Reel not that long ago. So
Oh. Have you heard of Preston Smith? He's like a Tiny Boat Nation bass guy. He's also a big swim bait dude.
I don't know him. I know there's a couple guys. I forget his name over in Oregon. He's really big into swim baits. Oh man, why am I blanking his name? Um, Ivan. Ivan up north,
Cruz?
and yeah, he's big into swim baits too.
He fishes a
So
lot
just
of the IKBF. See, does he fish? I know Jonathan Bush fishes like everywhere.
yeah, yeah. His goal this year was to do everything, and I think he's going to take a little bit of a step back next year. He
Yeah.
said he said it was a lot this year, so next year he's going to kind of just maybe pick and choose, but we'll see how it goes, you know. But I
Is he
like
like
him.
originally an IKBF guy?
So
Yeah.
you know, kind of. Um, he definitely is still like he was an IKBF because he's in Idaho, but
Okay.
the guys up there are way closer to stuff over in Washington. And so Idaho is somewhat split in that way because for me to go up to Coeur d'Alene is like 7.5 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's hard for
Whoa.
those guys to make the trek down here and for us to go up there. So a lot of those guys in North Idaho would fish in Washington because it's just easier. Um, but I actually, the first tournament John ever did was an IKBF one down here, and it was over at Black Canyon last year. And I actually sold him a GoPro like the year before, and he always talks about like I shipped it out before he even truly paid me on it. And he just thought that was super cool. He's like, man, like you just don't meet guys like that. And I was like, well, you're part of the group, you know, like I figured, you know, whatever, like no biggie. And so then I finally met him when he came down, and we just have talked a bunch ever since. And he stayed at my house a couple of different times. He stayed at my house one night for Hagerman on his way back. He stopped and stayed here so he could get a full night's rest before he went back. But we had Lake Lowell. He stayed here for the whole week, and he had his wife come, and we had
Cool.
them here for a week, and it's a good time. My wife and his wife get along really well, and we want to do some more like fun travel stuff together. So
Oh, so you think you do a podcast like this?
I don't know if I could ever put one on just because I struggle with the time. I just got a camera this year again. I always go back and forth. I bought a DJI, um, and I just essentially just glued that thing onto me every time I fished. Um, and I love the editing portion of stuff. The problem is time. I just don't.
Right.
I don't always have the time to do it, and that's my struggle. You know, I feel like if you couldn't tell, I can hop onto any podcast or anything like that. I can make new friends anywhere. You know, like I'll keep the conversation going for as long as you want, or until my battery dies. You know, one of the two. You know, I can just keep going. Um, and my wife complains about that all the time too. You know, I'm a talker, especially when it comes to fishing. I've got so much in my brain that I have just thought about for so long that I just constantly, you know, and
Mhm.
so yeah, I can just keep going. So by all means, you want me back on here, like just reach out.
I will for sure. I like those ideas too, and the big bass or the big bait discussions.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. There's a couple other guys. I forget his name, but that'd be kind of cool to get a kind of a group of us that like big baits and maybe just talk about some of our catches and our experiences and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that for sure. I think definitely gonna do that Discord thing probably the next couple of weeks. I don't know where to post it, but we'll figure it out.
Right, right. Just wing it.
It's what's happening. every day.
That works, man. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely got to get him to his class though, or he's gonna freak out on me.
No, you're good. My battery keeps telling me it's down past 10% anyways, so we're good, man.
Oh, all right,
But I really
cool.
appreciate you having me come on and talking and doing the podcast deal with everyone. So
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you coming on, man. For real.
absolutely, dude. Anytime.